Hello, today is February 3rd, and we are reading today our gospel for this coming Sunday, the fifth Sunday after Epiphany. Our gospel comes from Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. Once, while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but we have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. As we found in the last couple of weeks, Jesus has now begun, as we are following the narrative in Luke's gospel, Jesus has started his ministry. Jesus has been baptized. Jesus has come out of the wilderness. Jesus has preached in his hometown of Nazareth and been run out of his hometown of Nazareth. And now Jesus is teaching the crowds. We go from chapter 4, which ends there's a small portion that says Jesus continues to he starts teaching more and more, and now that he is gaining a following, people are listening. As it says, the crowd is pressing in on him. They want to hear the word of God. They want to hear his message. He is Jesus as the itinerant rabbi. He is the traveling preacher. He is the teacher. As Simon Peter calls him, he's the master. And so we have this, Jesus is standing next to the lake of Gennesaret in northern Galilee. We're at the sort of tippy top of Galilee here. And he commandeers Peter's boat. Peter is exhausted. He spent, as he said, all night long trying to catch fish and nothing. So now he's just trying to repair his nets, wash, and get ready for the catch the next day. And Jesus says, "Could I get some help?" And in some sense, Luke, similar to the call that is given in Matthew, Jesus, in some sense, reaches out the person who will become the leader of the church after Jesus' ascension. Peter. We're talking about Simon Peter, Cephas, the rock. He, in some ways, meets Jesus by happenstance. You know, you can say, well, there's a hand of divine providence at work. There is, Jesus knew he was going to be walking in that area. He knew. You can say all that. But for Simon Peter, a fisherman, this is happenstance. These things just happened to him. And so Simon Peter is not a rabbi. He is not educated. He's a fisherman. He's just a man who works with his hands. And not only is he a fisherman, he's a failure of a fisherman. So he's a fisherman. He knows nothing about catching people, as we'll get to. And he's a failed fisherman. He doesn't even know how to apply his own craft. He is exhausting himself, as he says, for nothing. And so Jesus, in happenstance, says, "Could I use your boat? Because the crowds are a little big. I think I can project outward if I'm sitting in the boat and teaching from there." So Peter probably a little surprised that the rabbi that everyone is talking about has asked him to do this. He rows him out, and Jesus does his teaching. And after he's done, when he had finished speaking, as the story goes, he says, Jesus turns to Simon, sees this exhausted fisherman who's been listening, probably, but also probably dozing after a long night of not catching nothing, of working very hard for nothing. And Jesus looks at him and says, try one more time. And he says, and Simon says, okay, if you think, sure, probably humoring someone who he thinks I probably shouldn't upset this famous rabbi. So he humors him. And suddenly the fish are breaking the nets. Now, Peter has work on his hands. There is a sense of there is much to do here. Whereas Peter was pointlessly exerting himself the night before, now suddenly his exertions are for a good work, and he needs others to help. As soon as he puts his nets in, they start to fill with fish so quickly that they start to pull his boat downward. They start to break the nets themselves. So Peter calls out his fellow fishermen, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, called in a slightly different way in Mark. But here, James and John are, business partners, fishing partners with Simon, and they go out, and then both boats are suddenly catching a crushing amount of fish in their nets. For all three of them, fishermen, uneducated, probably not leaders in their own right, probably not given much gift beside the sweat of their hands, the sweat of their brow, the strength of their hands. The three of them are suddenly pulled into a work, and it's not hard. Jesus spells out the symbol of what's happening. For these three men, suddenly their work is not in vain. Suddenly their work is for an abundance. It's not just for their daily bread. The catch of fish is so huge that it's an abundance, that what they'll have is enough to give and to share. It's enough to flood the market and lower fish prices so that everyone can afford fish for that week. The work they have is a work of abundance, and it's a work that is given meaning by the presence of Jesus. The same is true when the symbol of the fishnets goes away. When Simon Peter, when James and John get pulled into the work of Jesus, when they start to catch people, as Jesus says, their work is, they are suddenly given a crushing amount of work. They have to call other people in to do this work. And the work of the church is the same work that it has been forever. It is the work of witness. It is the work of service. Peter and James and John, they are witnessing to the love that God has for people, as witnessed in the life of Jesus and the death and the resurrection of Jesus, but also in the feeding of hungry people, and the care for orphans, and the care for the widows in their community, in the visiting of people in prisons, in care for the ill, giving to the impoverished. This is crushing work, and there are many, many of fish. There is an abundance of good work. The exertion is for good work. And so this entire chapter, Luke 5, Jesus is calling them to work that has meaning. We, as the heirs of Peter and James and John, equally as qualified as they are. That is, our qualifications really don't matter. What we have to bring to the table is the same that they have to bring to the table. A heart for the work of God, a love for a love for God and a love for Jesus, and a willingness to put our backs into it. So that is this whole gospel. It's a wonderful story that is like suddenly their nets were breaking and they were full of fish, but it's also a deep symbol of what it means to do the work of the church, what it means to be the church. It's not to collect prestige. It's not to be an identity that is just we are the church, and therefore we have all these rights and privileges from God. No, it is to be engaged in the work that Jesus has for us and to know that our work is meaningful. All right. That is our gospel for this week. I'll see you on Sunday. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you're staying healthy. Okay. Bye bye.